All right. Cool. So now we're gonna look more into the heart. So yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to fix this. Perfect. Um, so yeah, so for thousands of years, the Jews used to say a prayer every morning and every evening to express their devotion to God, and we can find it in Deuteronomy 6, verse 4 and 5. And we don't have to turn to it. It just says, like, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. So we all know it, really familiar to it usually. But I wanted to really understand what they meant through this. So I looked back into their context, and back then, they knew that the heart was an organ that we had in the chest, and that that's the organ that sustains life for us. And in 1 Samuel 25, verse 37, there's actually a mention of a heart attack. And it talks about Nabal, and he said that Nabal's heart died inside of him. So they knew that life was only sustained by this organ. But they actually didn't have any concept of the brain. Yeah, so because they didn't really know what was going on inside there, they basically thought that all like human intellectual activity actually happened in the heart. So for them, you then think in your heart, you make sense in your heart, it's where you feel emotions, it just regroup everything. Because obviously back then they didn't have all the techniques we have, like all the scans and everything, so they didn't really understand all the organs. They had like a vague idea, but they thought that everything was happening in the heart. So when they actually said, love God with all your heart, it's really with all your thoughts, with all your emotions, with all your intellect, with all your choices, etc. Yeah. So the meaning of their prayer actually diminished a lot for us, because we obviously, with all the knowledge that we have now, we kind of separate all of this, but for them it was everything. So through this afternoon, we're just gonna pick like Bible passages and look at different aspects of the heart in the Bible, knowing that that's how they looked at it back then. Yeah. So the first one we're gonna turn to, if someone can read it, is gonna be Luke 6, verse 45.
I can read it.
Go for it.
6:45. All right. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of.
Good. So the part I want to look into it is the good man bring good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil things stored up in his heart. And I like to underline stored up, because some of the synonym of that word, or saved, or kept, or retained, untouched, what they mean is that it's there for a while. There's no planning on removing it. Yeah. So they basically showed that in our heart we have a lot of things that are stored up, that are there, and are going to be there. And that will influence what comes out of us. So basically the heart is kind of like a filter that tints everything, our conversation, our relationship. We then like relate, we lead, we romance, we confront, we react, respond, manage, talk, everything from the heart. Pretty much everything just passes through your heart. Yeah. Another one is Deuteronomy 10, verse 16 and 19. If someone can read it.
What was the verse? Deuteronomy 10.
16 to 19.
Therefore, change your hearts and stop being stubborn. For the Lord your God is the God of gods and Lord of lords. He is the great God, the mighty and awesome God, who shows no partiality and cannot be bribed. He ensures that orphans and widows receive justice. He shows love to the foreigners living among you and gives them food and clothing. So you too must show love to foreigners, for you yourselves were once foreigners in the land of Egypt.
Thank you. So what I like in, actually, I think in the NIV version, it actually says, circumcised your heart. And that's really strong because basically God kind of showed them what they needed to do, but then we're all human. Oh, I think Audrey is connecting. All right. So because back then, at the moment when this passage was written, all male Israelites were required to be circumcised. But in this specific passage, we understand that God wanted them to go actually beyond just performing that surgery to actually really understand its meaning. They needed to submit to God inside in their heart. With a clean, submitted heart, they could actually begin to imitate God's love and justice for the people around them. But what I took this passage because it also shows us that we can be so shallow, you know, and just follow tradition and whatever. But we can do the things without taking them really deeply, like without really taking in the meaning of it. And also it shows us that it actually takes action to purify your heart. And that also shows that that the heart actually interfere with our actions. Yeah. Another one was in Matthew 15, verse 17 and 19.
Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these make a man unclean. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander.
Thank you. So it's quite strong, right? But to put it back in the context, Jesus was talking about the Pharisees and how they followed their traditions instead of obeying God. they basically prefer to look good rather than following him. And if you think about it, it's quite actual still. Like, are we really far from doing the same sometimes? Yeah. So it's still showing us we're really shallow. That's our human nature as well. If we can turn to 1 Peter 3, verse 3 to 4.
I can read it. 1 Peter 3:3-4 is,
Yeah.
beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self and the unfading beauty of a gentle, quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight.
Yep. So in this case, they actually made a show of obeying the law, but their heart was far from true surrender and faith in God. Because like in the other one, they just prefer to look good. Yeah, more than actually obeying him. So our heart isn't naturally good, that we can see it through all of those. And we need the word in our lives to be transformed and to be able to bear fruit. So yeah, so the next passage, Jesus actually shows us different statues of the heart so we can recognize our own and hear his voice. And the parable of the sowers, they actually told 3 times in the Bible. You can find it in Mark chapter 4, verse 1 to 20, or in Matthew 13, verse 3 to 23, and also in Luke 8, verse 4 to 15. But we're gonna read, if someone can read Matthew 13, verse 3 to 9.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Matthew 13, 3-9. He told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across his field, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on the fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand.
Yep. So we're gonna look into the 4 different ground that it talks about. And the first one is the roadside ground. And I'm gonna quickly read still from Matthew 13, the verse 19. And it says, if I find it, yeah. When anyone heard the word of the kingdom regarding salvation and does not understand and grasp it, the evil one comes and snatches it away. What was sown in his heart. This is the one on whom seed was sown beside the road. So basically, on the roadside or the footpath, the seed is just thrown there. So it's not really done with care. So it's not an investment. So it doesn't really actually hear the word of God purposefully. It's just thrown at him. And why is that? Is because the footpath is the path that is completely worn out. It's unguarded. And it has let many people, word, and circumstances affected. And in the case of a person, it's affecting their heart. Yeah, so that's the roadside ground. Then the second ground is the, sorry, I'm just trying to find my Bible verse. The stony ground. And I'm gonna read from the Amplified version because I like this one in the Amplified version. But yeah, Mark, ooh, my phone is going crazy. Mark 4, verse 16 and 17 says, in a similar way, in the second group, or the one on whom seed was sown on the rocky ground, who when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy, but only accept it superficially. And they have no real root in themselves, so they endure only for a little while. Then, when trouble or persecution come because of the word, immediately they are offended and displeased at being associated with me and stumble and fall away. Yeah. So the rocky ground is just a thin layer of soil. It doesn't have much depth. It is superficial. And those one like the idea of God and experience his promises, but they're really shaky. So their relationship with God isn't deep, and their faith is really weathered. And like they said, like if persecution come around, or if they are like pointed out because of their faith, they straight away, it would be easy for them to just deny it. Then the third ground is the thorny ground. And if someone can read Mark 4, verse 18 to 19.
I can read that. Hi. 18 to 19, hey?
Yeah.
Still others, like seed sown among thorns, hear the word. But the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and desires of other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful.
Yep, thank you. So yeah, so they have basically the necessary depth for growth, but to develop fruit isn't possible when other things share the soil. So the thorns, they're actually just sucking the life away from the seed. Because our heart is kind of like our production center. So whatever seed we sow into it, it will release it as a state of being, yeah. And when our heart is attached to other things like concerns or desires that should be in the space of God, of the Word of God for our life, then we cannot produce the fruits that He has planned for us. Make sense? Cool. Now the last ground, there is the good ground. And we're gonna look at it from Mark 20, and it says, and those in the last group are the ones on whom seed was sown on the good soil, and they hear the word of God, the good news regarding the ways of salvation, and accept it and bear fruit, 30, 60, and 100 times as much as was sown. So it's a healthy ground, and sowing in this type of ground is actually an investment, because the consistent and steady state of our heart will create the consistent state of our life. And that comes from hearing God's word and his presence in our life. And that also, it also allows to multiply. So throughout the teaching, I'm gonna give you like some questions. And if you wanna write them somewhere else on the side, and you can take time maybe in your quiet time or in your small groups or in your journal, however you want. But if you can take time and actually talk with God about those questions, yeah? So some of those, I have 2 questions for that parable, and it will be, what type of ground do you recognize yourself in? And it doesn't only have to be one, because obviously, like, depending on the seasons in life, we tend to change. So don't feel condemned, or don't feel like you don't fit in any. Like, you're always gonna fit in at least one of those. So if it's more than one, just put them down, and remember that Jesus shared that parable 3 times for us to be able to hear his voice and be transformed. So that's the first question. And the second one is, what need to be worked, or like what need to be pulled or removed, depending on what ground you are. Because I think this is one of Jesus' teaching that was so practical, so we might as well use it. All right. So one of the first story in the Bible is actually about a heart issue. Do you guys know which one I'm talking about?
Adam and Eve?
Yeah, no, not that one, but so we're gonna talk about Cain and Abel. So not far from Adam and Eve. And we're not gonna read the full story, but you find it in Genesis 4, obviously, because it's one of the first. But you all know, right, the story of Cain and Abel? Yeah? Okay, so do you actually really think that the problem of that story is just the offering? No, it's not. Like, God did not reject Cain's sacrifice. He confronted the heart behind it, the attitude. And it wasn't about what the offering was. It was that in his heart, he didn't want it to give the best. He was not willing to sacrifice the best. And the other thing is that when God rejected Cain's sacrifice, he became so full of anger and jealousy that he stored in his heart. And it's out of that stored up rage that he killed his brother Abel. So all of it was just a consequence of having a bad heart. And I'm gonna read from the Passion Translation. Hebrews 12, verse 14 and 15. I need to change my, there you go. So verse 14 and 15, and it says, in every relationship, be swift to choose peace over competition, and run swiftly towards holiness. For those who are not holy will not see the Lord. Watch over each other to make sure that no one misses the revelation of God's grace, and make sure no one lives with the roots of bitterness prodding within them, which will only cause trouble and poison the hearts of many. And sometimes I think, I wish that Cain would have had the chance to read these verses, because maybe it would have gone way different for him. And it basically said that hatefulness and holiness cannot dwell in the same heart. And that's so important. If you have any type of like resentment or like hate towards someone, then you cannot be a holy person. It's just impossible. And he also talks about bitterness being like poison for the heart of many. And we're going to look at that later on. But yeah, so that's a good one. And like if Cain would have known all of that, maybe he wouldn't have killed his brother, but he didn't have as much blessings as we do. And I'm going to quickly go through Jeremiah 17, verse 9. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. And he says that the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure, extremely sick. Who can understand it? And he says above all things. And if you struggle with the idea, just look back in your childhood. Like, did someone had to teach you how to fight with your friends, or how to throw tantrums, or how to steal a cookie? Not really. Our nature is to be selfish, to be proud, to be jealous, and so on. And if you take a look at the world, it's so obvious. There's so much crime, lust, war, corruption, greed. That's just because it's part of our human nature. And we somehow trust our own heart more than we trust Satan. So if we do the math, it is more deceitful, like he said, above all things. Yeah, makes sense? Cool. So we can't really understand or control our heart because a lot of its actions are actually unconscious. So the best we can do is to try to monitor it. Because out of the heart, like just really sudden things happen. Suddenly someone files for divorce, or suddenly a harmless pastime become a destructive habit, and so on. And the thing is, what originate, like what was like born in the secrecy of your hearts, sadly won't always remain a secret. Eventually it finds its way into your homes, your jobs, your schools, into everything, yeah? And if someone can read Matthew 12, verse 33 and 32, yeah, 33 and 34.
I can read it. You said 33 and 34?
Yes.
Okay. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart and the mouth speaks.
Yep. So it's pretty obvious. And then if someone can read Romans 10, verse 9.
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, 10, verse 9.
So what?
If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
Yeah. So all is well. So that's just like some encouragement in the middle. But yeah, like if we do declare that Jesus is our Lord, like it will work things out. But we still need to look at those things, yeah. it basically just shows us that we actually need God's help to watch over, to understand and purify our hearts, because we are often unconscious of what is going on in there. Like it's not for, like, I think sometimes even other people can see it better than we do. So can you imagine God? Like, so we're gonna read Ezekiel 36. Verse 26.
Read it. I can read it.
Thank you.
36:26, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove you from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Jesus. So he will do that for us. Like, it will be part of the process, and it will help us to purify. But it doesn't mean we can stop here and get comfortable, thinking that because we know in our heart that Jesus is going to do it, we can just like, whoo, relax. Because to be honest, even if like this promise is spoken over your life or everything like this, we still don't really know what is in our heart. Like, what's behind it, what's our hidden motives. And our heart can only produce from what he has been given. That is why we need to trust God, because he's the one that sees the shelves of our heart where you store up things. And we don't only do it because God promised that he's going to purify it, and because it's good for us, but because whatever is in our heart actually affects everything. It affects us, but it affects people around us. That's why we should do it. But it's always good with God. Like, we need to examine or like check our heart, just like you would do with your health or with your car. Like, sometimes you just do a health checkup. You go and do a blood test to see if everything is in order. Or with your car, you take it to the MOT to check the engine is fine. And it's funny that we are so vigorous in doing these things, but we don't actually do it with our own life engine. That is our heart. And Proverb 4, verse 23 says, guard your heart above all else, for everything you do flows from it. And it says above all else. And that's meaning that it's extremely important. It's more important than going to bed and sleeping or going to the loo. Like, it's the most important. It's above all else. And if we actually look at the first part of the verse, it doesn't say somebody else will do it for you. It says guard your heart. So you're responsible of guarding your own heart. It's like a full-time job, really. It is our relationship. No, it is our responsibility and our decision. And we need to be intentional. I will always remember Chris said something like few years ago, maybe 7 years ago, that always stuck to me. He actually said, we play to be Christians, but Satan never plays to be Satan. That's quite strong. And this is why we need to walk with integrity. We need to keep the cross in the center and confront our own selves. because the enemy is not going to just play around. And we need to know as well that we are only responsible because we are able. God trusted us with this. And it's part of the free will he has given us. So our heart condition depends on the things we allow into our heart. So when your heart taking fear or worry, doubt, and other things that stand in the place of the word, you usually won't be really pleased with the outcome of it. Because whatever we let in our hearts form our thoughts, our attitudes, and shape the deepest part of our being. And that's why our childhood is so key in our life. Because whatever is thrown into our life from then, because when you're a child, obviously you don't have as much like conscious of the things you're doing, but that actually like shapes you. It makes you who you are. And that's why when you become an adult and you have the capacity of understanding things, that's why we like God always take us to actually work on different area of our life. So we don't because we're not a victim of what happened to us, or like we're not a victim of the way we grew or the way we were shaped as a child, but actually with God we can transform these things for good. But usually if you know someone that is really fearful or doubtful, like it's something that you will sense on them, because that's something that gets so encrypted in their thoughts and their attitude that you know it, you feel it when you're with them. But if wrong things or things that are not really helpful in your heart go unattended, like I said with the childhood thing, they will actually become deeply rooted. And the more we wait, the harder it is to deal with, because they will keep on being fed by any situations, words, or circumstances. If, for example, if you're someone that, I don't know, that dealt with rejection as a kid, maybe that was abandoned or like adopted, and that unconsciously dealt with all of this in your heart, when you grow up, usually it's people that struggle a lot with rejection. So like if something happened with their friend, or if they're not picked in like a sports game or whatever, like that's things that would deeply affect them and that would keep on feeding those hurts they had. Yep.
So how do we know these things? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, well, that's part of the process and the walk with God. And as a Christian, it's like, I find it that a lot of time, like, well, discipleship obviously will help a lot to have someone that is walking alongside you towards God and that is just pushing you in that direction. Because usually someone that disciples us can see things clearer than we see it in our lives. And usually God uses them somehow. Like I know, for example, something that happened to me when I was younger, I never really realized about it, but like it started coming into my dreams. And like he kept on coming back to me in dreams until I really took the time, sat down with Jesus and dealt with it and understood what was the root and everything. But we'll get on with that as well. But so God will show them to you, and people around you will like notify it. Like it's just things that come up at some point. obviously only if you open-hearted and open enough for God to come and move in your life. Like there's a parable or something like this in the Bible that like for me was so key when I became a Christian, and I think it's in Jeremiah 18, and like he talked about the being in the hand of the potter, being the clay in the hand of the potter, and that when you decide to allow God, that sometimes it's gonna have to like crush it to make the pottery beautiful again, and that's that process of like God showing and dealing bit by bit with the things to make us a beautiful pottery kind of deal. But yeah, yeah, so I was saying, yeah, so basically whatever we go in unattended in our heart, we're going to keep on feeding it. And it's not our fault because it is unconscious most of the time. Like Kevin said, we don't always know about all these things. But when it comes up to light and when we allow God to work, that's when we can move on with it. Because if not, you're just going to get entangled. And it is sometimes, like if you don't deal with it, it can get to a point where you become really sick or really heavy or entangled completely. And some of the illnesses, they actually come from things that are stored in our heart. Like we saw in Hebrew 12, that bitterness was poison to the heart of many. Well, for example, bitterness and unforgiveness and stress and like really strong emotion like those, they create biles in our body, and those biles are like really acidic substances that move basically up and down and touch every area of our body, and that can create illnesses like cancer or ulcers. And so like yeah, like really strong, like a lot of time, like doctor when they deal with someone that has ulcer or even cancer, but mostly ulcer is usually easier to see it for that. They realize that it's just caused by really undealt strong emotion like that. People that are really bitter, they're gonna create so much acidity in their stomach that they're gonna get ulcers. So like it's funny because science proved it, but actually the Bible already had talked about it and had warned us about it. So it's kind of crazy. It's like science is a bit behind still. but yeah, so like it can become a real problem when we really get entangled in all of this. So the quicker we detect things and deal with them, the better off we go. It's like I like to see it because we talked about like God like looking through the shelves of our heart, and like the way when things happen we store it in our heart. So I like to see it as like an attic basically. and I like to think of it like as a really old person attic. I don't know if you have a grandma or a great aunt or someone in your family. They usually have this huge attic, and when you're a kid you love playing into it because it's fun and full of adventure. But if someone asks you to go and clean and organize everything, that would be really overwhelming. It would take you a few days to go through every boxes, open them, look what's trash inside and what's good, and clean and organize and take those spider webs away and dust it off. That's how I see it. So the more we wait, the more we refuse or we avoid to deal with it, the more the attic get cluttered and dirty and dusty. If someone can read 1 Samuel chapter 28, verse 3 to 8. 1 Samuel 28, verse 3 to 8.
Hello. All right. 1 Samuel 28, 3-8.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Now Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. And Saul had put the mediums and the necromancers out of the land. The Philistines assembled and came and encamped at Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Seek out for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her." And his servant said to him, "Behold, there is a medium at Endor." So Saul disguised himself and put on other garments and went, and he and 2 men with him. And they came to the women by night, and he said, "Divine for me by a spirit, and bring up for me whomever I shall name to you."
Thank you. All right. So in this passage, we can see that Saul had banned all mediums and spiritists from Israel. But when difficulty happened, he freaked out and he went out of the land to find one. So the problem we see there is that, yes, Saul had cleaned the land from witchcraft, but not his heart. So in panic, he went to what was easy and comfortable, like he went to the way he knew. He hadn't actually dealt with it, he just had removed the temptation. You understand the difference, yeah? So that's a good, I like this passage because it's a good visual of it. So yeah, so it's not just about removing the temptation, but actually dealing with it in our heart as well. Because it's like, let's say, trying to find another example more actual. Let's say we are someone that struggle with judgment or gossip. And we have that one friend that we know when we're with them, it's so easy to just like go around and gossip and judge. And so we decide, okay, it's better for me to not hang out with that person. And we kind of like take space, but then we don't actually deal with our judgmental and gossiping problem. So a next person that come around and that have the same struggle is gonna spark again. Yeah. And I'm gonna read really quickly Proverb 23 verse 7. And it says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so does he become." So that's another point. And he says we basically shape ourselves with our own thoughts. So with what we let in, with what we absorb, and also with our own word. And if you think about it, God spoke life into existence. So words have power. And basically it says like, if you say something all the time, like we always have like those, I don't know, sentences that we kind of repeat easily. Like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I'm really tired. I'm tired. I'm really tired." And then we say it through the day and through the week. Or, "Oh man, I'm so stupid. I forgot this. Oh man, I'm so stupid. I didn't see it. Oh man, I'm so stupid." Like this kind of thing. Or like, "Oh, look at me. I'm so ugly." Or, "Oh, I really don't like that girl. I kind of hate her." Like, and when we repeat this kind of thing, there's a strong chance that it end up real. Because it's kind of like we're convincing ourselves, we're speaking those words on our life or on the life of others. Yeah. And we're gonna read still in Proverb. Proverb 16 verse 23. if someone wants to take it.
Hello. Just 23?
Yeah.
The hearts of the wise make their mouths prudent, and their lips promote instruction.
Thank you. So yeah, it just kind of confirm what we said. In my version, in the Passion Translation version, I can't speak anymore. It says actually that when some words pour from a heart of wisdom, adding value to all you teach. So it really says that like whatever comes out of our mouth is because we know it comes out of our heart first, has so much importance. And our actions, they spring from something deep within us. It's like the fruits on the tree, they don't simply appear. It comes from the kind of tree that bears it. It comes from what it's being fed, and it comes from its roots. So basically what happened if, let's say, what happened if our heart is actually rooted in pride, for example? Well, usually the actions that kind of come out of that is probably someone that, how to say without offending, is someone that gonna, yeah, they're just gonna be talking over people, for example. Someone that is really mouthy and argumentative, someone that think they know better. Like that would be the heart of someone that is rooted in pride. That would be the actions that come out of it. But what would happen if you were rooted in love instead? Well, you'll be someone that is a lot more caring and encouraging and loyal. Yeah. So it does matter a lot. And if someone can read Matthew 12, verse 33.
All right. Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad, for a tree is recognized by its fruit.
Thank you. So it's pretty simple. Make it good and the fruit will be good. Make it bad and the fruit will be bad. So which kind of fruit would you like to bear? Fruits of fear, rejection, pride? Usually no, right? Because to be really honest with you, those sucks so much, because first it's gonna hurt you, but also before you even realize it yourself, everybody around you is gonna realize it. Because it's easier to see things in someone else than to see it in ourselves. So eventually they will see it way before you do, and they also can be hurt by it, but they also can judge you for it. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good thing that they would do so, but once again, we all have to deal with our own heart. So it might happen. But if your heart is actually centered in God instead, then it says that you will bear the good fruits. And those are the fruits of the Spirit. I think you all know them, yeah. Spirit, joy, love, peace, faithfulness, patience. So all those good fruit, you can bear them if you align yourself and center yourself with God. So we're gonna do now. So yeah, it's good to ask yourself, to ask yourself for like, what kind of fruits do you bear? Like to just look at yourself and see like, oh, what kind of fruits come out of my life? And to look at our actions and reactions and to ask God, what are the roots of it? Because God said he would help us, and he also gave us a co-worker, and that's the Holy Spirit. Because we don't really know like what's gonna happen next. We don't know what can happen in the next 5 minutes. And someone might say something hurtful or disappoint us or stand us out, and suddenly it's gonna be something new we're gonna have to deal with. So that's why we need to help ourselves and take those moments and check back. Just do a heart check with God. So when you have time, like I said earlier, like when your quiet time or in your journal or whatever, I think it would be good that you draw a tree with roots and with fruits. And in the fruits, I want you to write down actions and reactions that you see a lot in your life. And then for each fruit at a time, to ask God, what are the roots of it? And you can write down what God says to you in the roots of the tree. Because that actually can help you to visualize it and to actually deal with it.
What did you say to write down in the fruit?
So in the fruit, like actions or reactions, so like things that you see yourself doing a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, let's say that one of your fruit could be like I always make fun of that person, or like I reject that person. And sometimes we're gonna know why. And that's fine because you can write it down, but sometimes we're gonna have to still ask the roots because it might be something deeper that we know as well. Maybe reject that person because, I don't know, I struggle with this and that, and it makes me feel better when I do so. So the root could be, well, insecurity because of something that happened to you, or it could be something else. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, cool. So that's when you have time to a good exercise to do. And it's again that something to do with God, and not as like a time of condemnation and like, oh my God, why I do this and why do I have all those bad roots and blah blah blah, but more about like, okay God, you know what, I put them in front of you and this is my reality and I need you to walk with me, because it's not about being condemned but about being convicted and about walking forward and not being stuck. Yeah. So I wanted to talk as well a little bit about our heart in today's culture, in today's society. Because we know, and it says in the Bible, that what we call the world is completely out of line with God's purpose, right? And we're not going to read it, but it's you can read it in different places, but one of them is in 1 John 2, verse 15. Because basically after the fall, so when Adam and Eve crapped on everything for us, the door was open for Satan to move in. And that made things really hostile for God. And it's really easy to think that, or like to be tempted to overcome the messed up world by getting out of it, because it would be easier. And to be honest, there's a lot of religious groups that have tried that. All the monks and nuns and different cults, like a lot of people have tried that. But that's not what God has called us for. and we're called to be in it and to overcome it and to be the light. So seeing the world with God through his wisdom, his eyes, can be really impactful. So we might actually give the enemy some trouble by living in it. It's more worth it. But we need to also remember we are only able, or like we're only responsible because we are able. And it's part of the free will and love that come from God. And that's why we want to take care of our heart and bear good fruit, to honor him and bring a difference to the world we live in. And also fulfill what God has called us to do. Yeah? So this is why we need to be aware of what we feed our hearts with. And the main question is, are we actually being wise with our choices? Like, what kind of movie do you watch? What kind of music do you listen to? What do you read? What kind of conversations are you having? What do you struggle with? It's important to know, because what you feed yourself will definitely affect you and influence you, but it will also affect and influence others. That's why we need to be wise with our choices. And what I mean is, like, if I'm someone that struggles with a lot of fear and a lot of unbelief, or I struggle with trust in God, and I'm someone that is also reading the news constantly, that's not going to help me. That's just going to bring me down. Or if I'm someone that struggled with like daydreaming and fantasy, and I'm someone that read a lot of like fantasy books and watch romantic comedy all the time, but that's not going to be helpful for me, because it actually gives me more nutrients to just go and like daydream about whatever. It gives you more like material. And if I'm someone that is struggling with anger, well, if I'm someone that is also listening to, I don't know, like hard metal or rap, that's not gonna be helpful, because it's gonna maintain my anger. It's gonna like feed it, yeah? So are we being wise with our choices? Like, for example, for me, I used to love to watch horror movie. Like, I used to really love it. Everything that was with like spiritual horror movie, like, you know, like everything that had to do with spirits and like demon possession. Like, I found it so thrilling. Like, there was this show that I started watching a long time ago. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's Supernatural, something like this. And it was like, it's kind of like they take it really lightly. So it's like, oh, it's kind of cool, it's fun. But the thing is, I'm also someone that have a lot of like sensitivity to the spirits world. And so I would watch those, but then I would get like really vivid dreams of demons, and I would get what I can call visits. So like I would feel things and see things. And I knew, because I was feeding myself with so much of this, that obviously it was not helpful. So I had to stop completely. Even though it can sound so stupid, because it can be so far from reality, but actually, is it so far from reality? Yeah. So today I'm someone, I still probably would enjoy a good horror movie, but I know I can't watch them, so I just don't. So it's yeah, so it's basically this, like, are you wise with the choices you make? Yeah. And to be fair, the enemy loves all these things, because for him it's one of his like easiest tool to use against us. Because it's so easy for us to unconsciously fall for it, because it sounds so, like, I don't know how to say that word, like benign, like it sounds so like unimportant, like it's just like a little thing, it's not that bad. So for us, it's really easy to fall into these things because we don't really take it seriously, or we don't really realize what we're doing. But he loves it because it's whatever, like it's what he uses and what he calls distraction. It's what keeps us in our struggles and what keeps us away from God. So for him, it's a winner. But I looked at the definition of distraction because it's really interesting. And so basically the definition is the process of diverting the attention of an individual or group from a desired area of focus, and thereby blocking or diminishing the reception of desired information. And distraction is from both external and internal sources. External distraction can be visual triggers, social interaction, music, phone, and so on. And internal distraction can be hunger, or fatigue, or illness, or worry, or daydreaming. So the enemy uses distraction to keep us bound, keep us busy, stagnant, and going in cycles. And ultimately, keep our heart away from building a relationship with God. And for him, it's so easy because he doesn't have to do much, just have to dangle something in front of us. Like, oh, here's Netflix. And we're like, oh, Netflix. And I'm not saying Netflix is bad, because Netflix is not bad. I do watch things on Netflix as well. But are we being wise with our choices? Yeah? And in Psalm 119, verse 112, it says, I incline my heart to perform your statutes forever to the end. And it is I that incline my heart. It's our decision and our job to keep it that way. It's not someone that is going to incline it for us. So we choose what we feed our life with. And we won't quit because the enemy won't quit. And he's always going to try different pattern. That's why we need to be alert. And that's why it's not a thing that we do once and this is it. I am free for life. I dealt with my heart. I did that checkup with God. Whew, all done. No, it's something that we should do constantly. Like I said, like you will check your car, your health. Same, like we should check our heart. Yeah, to just check where we at, like what God thinks, what he sees. And to be honest, he's not like gonna deal with everything in your heart at once, because that would probably kill you. If he had to bring up everything at once, it would be so overwhelming and so painful. Like we can't even imagine it. That's why through life is gonna choose different time and different season to deal with different things because he knows better. And that's why we need to, it's gonna be something that we're probably gonna have to do consistently. If someone can read Matthew 5, verse 27 and 28. What was it again? Matthew 5, verse 27 and 28.
I got it.
Yeah?
Y'all. You have heard, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to take it deeper. But yeah, in this passage, we can see that our heart is always 5 steps ahead. That the intention of our hearts are important. Because it's so easy to think, and I think it's normal to think, that it's not that bad because it was just a thought. Or just like, oh, I felt that way, but it's not okay. It's not that bad because I actually didn't do it. It's like we think that it's innocent or unconscious, but if we did think about killing someone in our heart, it's like he already had, like in the spiritual world and in the kingdom of God, it's like it already happened basically, because our heart is influenceable, like influential to the rest of our body, to our action, to our thoughts, to everything. Like they said, if you thought, like if you had lust and you thought about committing adultery, you already did. And that's why it said in Psalm 119, I incline my heart to you, O God. Because we need that, because it's so easy for us. It's so unconscious for us, but it's so easy to fall into these things. Because it's part of our nature, it's part of who we are. And yeah. But it's key to incline yourself to God and to be aware and alert of all these things. And if you struggle to hear God, to hear from God, if you try with a pure heart, it's a lot easier. There's less thorns to distract the word of, like, the voice of God in your life. And God promises blessings to those with a pure heart. Because it's not only good for you, but it blesses people around you and influence people around you. And if we can read Act 15, verse 9. I can quickly read it. It basically said, he made no distinction between us and them, for he purified their hearts by faith. So it's like, if you do this, if you do those efforts for you, it will affect as well people around you. Because if people see it in you, it's going to give space for God to move in their life as well. It's like I always said, like, we had this girl in our team. She's still part of our team, but she's in a different city. Her family was completely atheist, and she became a Christian when she was, I don't know, 15, when she was a teenager. And she, like, obviously it was always a thing that, okay, I'm Christian, my family is not, they should be Christian, but you know, like, you can't really force them. And usually it's not our place really to do it. But we could see so clearly that as she decided to keep on walking with God and to follow and obey his voice, how that like rippled to her family as well. And our family started coming to hang out with us all the time. Like, her sister would come and spend a few nights. Her brother would come around and just hang out with the whole team. Like, when we had something going on as a team, our mother would show up randomly, and like, just like funny things like that. They just started coming around a lot more and being more curious and being more, asking more questions to her as well. And like, the last things I've heard from them is that the grandma kind of like decided, no, that's it, you're gonna have to listen to me. And like, every time they have a family time together and the grandma is there, she forced them to listen to the Bible. And she read through the Bible to them, and they actually sit there and enjoy it, and they ask questions. And for her family, that's a crazy step, but it's just a blessing over her life that rippled to her family. And I'm not saying they are Christian yet, they're not all like converted Christian, but they're so much more open than they were a few years ago, and their relationships are completely changed. Yeah, so it is true. It's a really good true thing. Like as much as you walk and do these things, it's gonna ripple to people around you. But this is why we also need to be renewed in our mind. And if someone can read Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24.
Ephesians 4:22 to 24.
Yep.
Throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'm sure you'll have another teaching about it. But like with the Holy Spirit, you can be renewed in your mind and in your heart. Because at the end of the day, it isn't about us, but it's all about Jesus. It's because he sacrificed himself for us that all of this is possible. And if someone can read from Psalm 139, verse 23 and 24.
I got it.
Thank you.
Search me, O Lord, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life.
Thank you. So I love this passage because it basically said everything we've been talking about. Like David asked God to check his heart. Like he took this time with God to check his heart and he asked God to show him what was in his heart, what was the thing. And if we can read Luke 5, verse 36.
Is it Luke 5, verse 36?
Yeah.
Okay. He said, he also told them a parable. No one tears a piece from a new garment and puts it on an old garment. If he does, he will tear the new. The piece from the new will not match the old.
Yeah. So basically we cannot keep the old and have the new. It's not gonna work together. That's why we need to do these things and just like full on accept the new things. And it makes sense if you think about it. It's really clear. Like you cannot still have rejection in your heart, but walk around feeling accepted. Like it just doesn't work. So that's why we need to ask ourselves the right questions. And you can write those down. So this is just a list of questions that I've done. It doesn't mean that there's no other question can have when you just take this time with God and ask him to check your heart, basically. So the first one, and I'm gonna read from Luke 12, verse 34. Luke 12:34. And it says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Yeah. So your heart is wherever your treasures are. So that's why the first question is where is my heart at? Because if you find out where your heart is at, it would be really easy to see like the things that you put in the place of God in your life. The second one is where and how do I spend my time, my energy, my resources, my affections. Where and how do I spend my time, my energy, my resources, my affection? The next one is, why am I Christian? And what are my motivations? Why am I doing a DTS? How and why am I using my gifts, my skills? It could be your arts or your sports. And this is really important because like we given gift and we given skills to serve God, but where your heart is not in the right place, then you are using it for another purpose. And like, for example, when I came to our team, God had talked to me about doing like working in the tattoo industry and like working in tattoos. And I was so excited because I always really liked tattoos and I always really liked this world. And and so I was like really into it, like practicing and like researching and watching shows about it and looking at pictures and stuff. But there was one point where like God basically like told me to stop because tattooing and the tattoo industry became more important than him in my life. And obviously it's not because I wanted it to be, it just happened unconsciously. And I just need to charge my computer because it's about to die, obviously. So just a second. Okay, yeah, sorry. So I was saying, yeah, that like it's not because I made everything possible for it to become more important, or that I didn't love God, or that I didn't want it to use it for him. It's just that unconsciously have become way too important in my life. And God had to tell me, listen, that is it. And that was really hard because the thing is, because it was so important to me, I started putting my identity in it. I put my identity in being a tattoo artist eventually, or like being in that tattoo industry. So when he asked me to stop, it's like in my heart, it was really rough because it's like I lost purpose for a little bit. But that wasn't my main purpose. But I had forgotten about that in a sense. And it eventually took me maybe a bit under 2 years where I did not allow myself to practice, to watch shows, to look at pictures, and I just really took this time between me and God, so He could realign the desire that He had put in my heart and the calling that He had put in my life with Him. Yeah, so that's why I'm asking this, because if your gift or if your art like goes in your heart in front of God, then you can be losing purpose as well. The next question is, why am I friend with that person? Like, what are your motivations to be friend with that person? Because in a sense, friends can be a
Melo.
trap. Yeah?
Sorry, can you repeat the question and why?
Which person do you mean? I think everybody.
It depends on who you are. Like, you have a different person in your life that you're really good friend, that you feel maybe that there's something that's not really cool with it, you know? Like, and it could be for different reason, but that's why you need to ask yourself, because it could be that, let's say you're friend with someone because you connect in the same crap, basically. Like I said earlier, if you're someone that struggle with gossiping and one of your greatest friend also struggle with gossiping, while you friend with that person, is just because you actually get to gossip together? Or is it because you know the struggle of each other and you can actually help each other to quit this and grow closer to God? Or are you friend with someone because you know they are someone really sacrificial and that they're always going to be there for you and that you don't have to give back the same, because you know that no matter what, they will always show up. So you basically take advantage of that person in your heart. You might not say it, you might not look at it that way, but in your heart, this is what's happening. Or are you friend with someone because you know that if you have a struggle, they always will pet you down, like, oh my, like, I'm so sorry to hear you're going through this, oh yeah, it really sucks, when really what you need to hear is get up and move. You know, it's like, why are you friend with the person you're friend with? Like, why is it? Like, is it the type of friendship that God talks about, or is it the type of friendship that human society talk about? So this is kind of the question. Where is your heart at when you actually friend with that person? Yeah. And another question is, what are the desires of my heart? And do they align with God? And the next question is, are the things that I am allowing in my life good for me or for the people around me? And there's probably many more questions you can ask yourself. But those are a few, and it's not like you have to ask all of them at once, but like God will guide you through your check. Like, He will bring up something and then you'll know which question to ask yourself, you know? if someone can read Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 7.
Just kidding. Hi, hello. Did you say Proverbs 3, 5 through 7?
3, 5 to 7, yeah.
Do you care about translation? No, okay, never mind. Oh, okay. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you which path to take. Do not be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil.
Yep. And he says again, with all your heart. So with all your intellect, with all your emotion, with all your choice, with everything. So God has things way more clearly than you and I do. That's just what it is. And we have seen really clearly that we cannot rely in our own wisdom, insight, or understanding. So in all your way, know and acknowledge him. It means to surrender to him, to recognize his lordship, to worship him, to take your quiet time seriously, because that's a moment of intimacy with him. And all of this because he deserves it. And use everything that we have to honor and worship him. Because everything that we have is everything that he has given to us. And that will make our path straight. And it will also help us to take our eyes out of ourselves. So we can just look to him, trust, rely on him, and he will take those blocks away. Because his heart is to help us. And that's why he has given us so many winks about our heart in the Bible. That's why he has given us so much information about it, because he wants to help us with it. He wants us to be free and to follow him. So always be thankful, because that's the key. And I'm going to read quickly Proverb 2. Yep. Proverb 2, verse 10. And he says, for wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. So as you work in these things, as you get to know the things in yourself, you will be fine with it. Because if you choose his wisdom, you will know that it's because because he's working in it, because you're actually walking in freedom and walking in wisdom, and that it comes from him. And all of this obviously is covered by his grace. So as long as we are willing, faithful, and obedient, his grace will cover the rest. And I always like to remember that when Jesus, by the way, it was the one that was sent on earth to experience everything that we experience. So he knows exactly what we're dealing through in our hearts. But also, when he chose the 12 disciples, none of them were perfect. He didn't choose them because of their unbreakable faith or their crazy gift or their leadership skills. The only one thing they all had in common was their obedience to Jesus and their willing hearts. And that still applies for you and for me. We are chosen not because we're perfect, but because we have a willing heart and we obey. Yeah? Do we have any questions or comments or thoughts?
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, I can go first, but then if you don't talk, I'm gonna call on you, so you might as well talk. But I love, Melo, how you kept repeating, we are responsible because we are able. You said that several times, and it's such a good reminder of how, like, yes, like God has allowed us to deal with our hearts, but it's because we're able, because we have the Spirit inside of us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Then, as we're willing, as we're obedient, we have that responsibility because we're able. So it's awesome. Thank you so much. You guys can go ahead and share, or I'll come on again and call you.
Okay. So I really appreciated just the last thing you said about being willing, faithful, and obedient, and that His grace will cover the rest. Because, like, we are human, we do mess up, but if we take if we make the decision to follow Him and allow His wisdom to pour into us, then, like, all we have to do is those three things. It's just be obedient to what He asks of us, be faithful to Him. So I thought that was just a really good reminder. I also liked that you said our hearts affect everything around us, because that's like a good thing to remind ourselves. So like there's some days like you're just having a bad day, and that kind of like comes out. And I was a teacher, and one of my students said that the thing she likes most about me is that when I'm having a bad day, I still like care about my students. And that was like kind of a heart check for me, like, just because it's true, like if what's in our hearts does affect everything around us. It affects how we interact with people, it affects like the things that we do, the choices we make. So that was also a really good reminder.
Yeah, that's good. Because anyway, like, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to do a wrong decision for our life, because it will happen. Like, no one of us are perfect. So it will happen more than once, like that we want it or not. It's just the way it is. But that's why the whole point of this is not like, ooh, shame on you because our nature is so terrible. It's more like, okay, well, now that's going to happen, so we might as well know how to react, or like how to take this thing seriously in our hearts, because that's the only thing that matters for God. Like, He's going to be forgiving, no matter, like, He's going to be forgiving our sin, He's going to be forgiving our mistakes. That's a fact. But the thing that is more important for Him than all of this is our heart, is the way we are in our heart, is the way we, like, our motivations, the way we want things, the way we apologize or repent when this kind of thing happens. That's really what matters. And that's why, like, the process of entangling everything in our life and like making sure our heart is pure to God is so we can go in a easier way through it, you know, and like be more free, and to, like we said, inspire others. Like you said, like, if you were a teacher and the kids noticed that it didn't matter if you had a bad day, your heart was to bless them, and they felt it, because that's what it is. Like, it's really good.
I think for me, something that really caught my attention was when you were kind of preaching in, I think it was the Proverbs 4:23, when you said to like guard your heart. Mm-hmm. It makes me also think of kind of what that I preached on yesterday about like taking your thoughts captive. So like the idea of us constantly having to work. And I know you mentioned like earlier, it's not just like once you're saved, like, oh, cool, that's it, I'm done. Like, it's just a constant thing to remember that, like, even subconsciously, our hearts are doing things and they're naturally wicked. And therefore, our thoughts become those. And so the idea of like taking our thoughts captive and examining our hearts and guarding our hearts, it's like a constant thing that we have to remember to do. And like along with that, the idea of what you said about how the enemy likes to like change its pattern to like continue to pull us back into like distractions and toxic cycles that we get in. I just like the idea of, you know, there's always like that metaphor of like we're constantly like on the battlefield, which is just kind of, I've just been visualizing that a lot recently, of having to constantly fight, but like knowing that God's on my side. And he knows my heart even more than I know my heart. So, but yeah, that, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway I got from it.
Yeah, it's a good what you said as well, what Fede was teaching about, because like I remember for me when I became a Christian, that was one of the hardest thing I had to deal with, because I have done a lot of bad things in my life when I wasn't a Christian. And I even came to YWAM to do leadership school thinking that I didn't have to convert to Christianity to do it. I don't know, I could think something like this, but like I was crazy. And but when I made that decision in my heart to follow God, I had so much trouble with my thoughts, because like we said, the enemy wanted to pull me back. And our thoughts are so important because they were just being distracting to me, and they were putting me down, making me doubt. Like, it was all those like really negative thoughts that would come to me all the time, and I really had to learn how to like take authority over my mind and my heart, you know. And like obviously it wasn't easy in the beginning, because I would get really exhausted physically from like just fighting with myself, and I would get tired and I would just be like, shut up. Like, I would literally talk to my thoughts, because I was like, no, I can't be thinking that way all the time. But as we go on in life, when we do those things, like not often, but like when we care about these things and we work on them, like it does become easier, because we create this like this alarm, like we become more alert to things like this. And I know, like, obviously I don't have the same struggle I had back then, so I don't struggle with my thoughts like I did before, but like I'm really quick as well to realize, like, if I'm having a bad thought that is not going to be helpful, like I'm really quick to be like, wait, that wasn't normal, like, you know, because I like, the more we deal with these things, the more we recognize it as well, and the more we get authority over them as well. So it's good.
So one of the things that we talked about was just kind of like whenever you are saying those negative things to yourself and how they can become truth over time, just how susceptible we are to adjusting what truth is in our hearts. We're very fickle in that sense. But one of the girls on the team here, Ina, always says like, speak life, you know? And so if you, the other side to that coin is to constantly speak the life and the good into you. And that is the truth that you'll live off of. So, I mean, repetition is, while it seems so mundane, repetition is really what sticks. And so if you constantly are telling yourself truth and God's word and playing music that is of God and like to help fight that, and also like you said, like saying no to those negative thoughts and just actively pushing against it, it's what's going to become truth in your head. So that's one of the coolest things that, I mean, I constantly have to, because my brain is something that I battle with a lot too, is the thoughts. So constantly knowing to push against it. So, but yo.
It's good.
I just really liked it when you said that you have to remember to check your heart, because I feel like it's one of the biggest organs in your body, and like you just have to remember to check on it. Yeah. Okay.
I really like that you mentioned that like back when this, or like more when this was written, like people like thought that the heart was like also like your thoughts or stuff like that you're saying, and it really like gave me more perspective as like when they're saying like with all your heart, like they're also saying with all your thoughts, with everything you're doing, and I really liked that.
Yeah.
One thing that really stood out to me that you said something along the lines of how we play to be Christians, but Satan doesn't play to be Satan. I thought that was really interesting. And also how like above all else, you have to guard your heart, because everything that you do really does flow from your heart. Whereas if you like an evil heart produces evil and a good heart produces good. And another thing was how you were saying how God spoke life into existence. So speaking has its own sort of power. And when you speak stuff and you can like convince yourself of stuff almost, and when you keep repeating and repeating stuff to yourself, they can become truth over time. Because I have a really, really bad habit of like talking to myself. And like I'll often when I spend time with God, like it'll start out with me like praying, and then it'll become like me kind of just talking to myself. So just to be able to like come back and like be like I'm talking to God, like I can't just like, yeah. But yeah, everything really does come from your heart. And when you spend time with God and you really develop a more relationship with him, you can kind of be able to decipher like what is good, and yeah, have more wisdom through what comes out of your heart.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's true what you say as well, like with talking to yourself after a bit, like when you start praying, because it's so easy, like it's not like there's not a recipe on like the way we pray as well. And I find it so funny, like because I love to hear like how everybody like prays so differently. Like you have like, I don't know, we have one guy in the team, it makes me laugh so much because when you pray it literally sounds like he's talking to like one of the bro in the hood, like, you know. And it's so funny. And like, but God doesn't care, like even if you end up talking to yourself, like because of, if you do it with the like the intention of talking to him, and you just process things out loud, because sometimes as well that's how we are. Like I know I'm an out loud processor, like it's really hard to process things from inside, but if I talk them out, then things become more clearly. And that may be like it's a way for you to do it, but like God still hears it, you know. And he probably like still think it's like really cute, like, you know, like God is really like, oh, that's cool, like, but at least she's like putting things out, you know. So it's fun, it's really good.
Evan, Julian, Audrey.
Sorry, what? I didn't hear what you said.
Any feedback, Audrey?
Yeah, I really one thing that kind of stuck out to me was when you were talking about how like we really do need to be wise with our choices, because there, like, obviously there are some things in the Bible that says like this is a sin no matter what, but then there are some things that like certain people could do and other people couldn't, like the watching of horror movies. Some people who don't really struggle with fear and anxiety could probably be fine watching horror movies, but other people who do struggle very much with a lot of spiritual fear, it would not be wise for them to watch horror movies. And so there are a lot of things that really go from person to person on what's wise for you to do and what's not, and it really just depends on your personal situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. But I also like, there's like few things that are still like, how to say it, like they're really different. Because for example, horror movies, yes, like someone that has anxiety and fear, like that's pretty gonna affect them. But horror movie also often based on like really spiritual things. And no matter, like obviously there might be some horror movies that are just really stupid and like talk about whatever. Like, I don't know. I was going to say It, but even It, there's some really weird spiritual crap in it. So, but like what I'm saying is like those spiritual things, even if we can't see it because we're not meant to, in the spiritual, it does affect quite a bit. And like, for example, like even like if I'm not watching it, if someone watch it in my house, I'm going to be affected by it because it's in the spiritual. We have actually an example, and it's not about a horror movie, but we had a girl that was staying for part of her outreach with us because she couldn't get the visa to go with her team. So she just stayed for 2 weeks with us, and she was alone with our team before she could join the rest. And she was the sweetest, like we had no problem with her whatsoever. But the whole time she was in our house, we couldn't sleep. We had a lot of nightmares, a lot of like waking up, and we didn't know why. And it's not like we talked about it, but bit by bit we realized that we were all tossing and turning, and we talked about it. We're like, oh, you too? That's crazy. Like, what's happening, you know? And it kind of like jumped out that maybe something was going on. And but we obviously we didn't know why it was. It was just in the spiritual atmosphere. That's what it was. And we talked, we were just chatting around with that girl, and she said like how she really enjoyed during this time because she was in England and in London, and she found it so cool to be in England and every night being able to watch one movie of Harry Potter because it's England. It's like it just fits perfectly, and she had enjoyed it so much. But the reality is that Harry Potter was written by a woman that is not worshiping God. But more than this, she worships the other things. Like she's more towards the enemy. And that the intention of her heart when she wrote those books and the movies adaptation is was to make witchcraft a like normal thing, a everyday thing, a not scary thing. And basically what you end up doing is that there's a generation of people that are really attracted to witchcraft. And now you go to the bookstores and you have books about how to do witchcraft, and you have like witch kits for little girl to like try to grow, and you even have witch schools that opened. So you know what I mean? I'm not saying the movie is terrible. Like I understand that the movie is about adventure and it's exciting and there's fantasy and like, and I understand the attraction of it. But if you watch it without knowing these things and without guarding your heart, whatever the author wanted to communicate is still communicated. So even though like she wasn't watching Harry Potter in our house just to bother us, or because it was such a like, or because it's a bad movie or whatever. But the thing is, we were all living in one house, and this house was dedicated to the Lord, and everything we did from and in this house was supposed to glorify God. And when she brought that movie that was about witchcraft, something in the spiritual atmosphere was clashing. You know what I mean? So like beyond our understanding, things do affect. And it doesn't only affect you, but it affects others around you. And I'm talking about Harry Potter, but it could be other things as well. Like there's so many different things that are created with the wrong intention. It's like Disney invented white magic to make it a good thing, and all the kids like look at Disney and like are like so amazed. And I'm not saying it's bad. I watch most of the Disney movie, and like I enjoy a lot of them. Like I would even watch them today. It's not the problem, but it's what it did. You know, what was the intention?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's true that it does affect us, and maybe like I won't be affected by watching Harry Potter, but I don't know if it's gonna affect someone else around me. And maybe I'm still opening a door in my heart that I didn't know could have been opened. We don't know. That's why we need to guard our heart. I'm not saying never watch Harry Potter. I'm just saying you need to make sure that you're guarding your heart. Yeah?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Cool. But yeah.
thank God I don't like Harry Potter or scary movies. So something. Well, but I have to check my music because my music probably isn't that good. A question you did that asked that I liked was, why are my friends my friends? Like, and that explains the reasoning. I was thinking about it the whole time, and that explains the reasoning why I don't have a lot of friends. Because I wasn't trying to find anything on them, and later, and because I thought I knew it all, so I didn't have to grow. I didn't. I didn't need friends. That was my concept of friends. But later, after I started growing up, I noticed, wait, I do need friends. I need someone to help me grow, and I can help them grow, and it's like a mutual thing. So yeah, that question I really liked. It made me think a lot.
That's good. Yeah, we're not called to be a lone wolf. Like, it's so many times in the Bible they talk about like being the body and being together and having people keeping us accountable and being a community and being there for each other, brother and sister. Like, it's so important because, like you said, I think it's in Proverbs where it said like iron sharpen irons, and that's why we need other people to like to help us grow, because the friendship that we see in the world today is so tinted by the society, and it's all about human love and like, oh, I can't offend you, and I can't hurt you, and I can't confront you, and we have to always be happy with each other and like always be good. But to be honest, that's not true. Like, if I see my friend struggling with something, I want to be the one that is able to tell my friend like, hey, look at this, what do you think? Like, and is confronting with love and with the right heart again. But like, that's the kind of friendship that God talks about, is the one that are able to confront each other and to pull each other towards God. But it's so easy to have friendship that actually pull us down, because when you struggle with something, it's easy to connect with someone that struggle with the same thing, and that can also be really good or it can be really bad. And I'm not saying you have to like put a cross on all your friends, but if you realize those things and you want to make the change in your heart, and you realize that's something that is also, that being friend with that person is not helping, well then if you come to that knowledge and that wisdom, then you can act on it. And I'm not saying like you have to completely like stop your friendship, but like you can talk vulnerably with that person and open up and ask for help and ask them if they want help. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can make a relationship healthy if you go with the right heart.
Yeah, I really liked what you said about Saul cleaned the land from witchcraft, but not his heart. And it's not just to removing the temptation, but just to clean our heart. And yeah, and about what you said for Harry Potter and all this stuff, I think it's like Paul said in the Bibles, who everything is permitted but not useful. And yeah, I think it's even dangerous to see that movie or that kind of thing, because like you said, the spiritual atmosphere is changing when we do that. And yeah, I think it's not useful. So yeah, maybe it's more important to just don't do that, because we can take this time for glorify God. And yeah, and when I sorry. Yeah, when I commit myself, when I met Christ, the Lord told me to stop a lot of things, and yeah, it really changed my life. So I think we have to be radical with this, but it's just my opinion.
Thank you. That's really good, actually. It's true. Like, everything is permitted but not useful. No, it's good. And I think we do, like, we cannot force each other or force people to be radical, but it's true that it's a good thing, because the more the more you take things that are like in the way, the more you get to focus on God. So it's good. Cool. I think that was everybody.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. Thank you. It's been an amazing word, a lot for us to chew on. Can you just pray for us to close this time?
Yeah, of course. God, we want to thank you so much for today. We want to thank you for open hearts, Jesus, and for your grace and for your mercy and for your for just wanting to be there for us, for your sacrifice for us, Jesus. Thank you that your heart is to help us to grow closer to you, Jesus, and to be better, not only for ourselves but for people around us, Jesus. And we wanna really ask you that whatever needs to be stamped in our heart, Jesus, from this afternoon will be stamped in our heart, God. That whatever you need to work on in our heart, Jesus, that we want to be open for you to move and do the things, Jesus, that you have to do. I want to ask you to bless each and every one of them, God, and that you cover them with your love, Jesus, that they would really understand and feel what it is to be in awe of you, but also what it is to change with you, Jesus, to be surrounded by your love and by your refreshment and by your peace, God. That in this time of DTS, where they're deciding to transform their life and to become one of your disciples even more, that every teaching, everything would just be a refreshment for their soul, God. That you bless them and you talk to them in like really surprising way, Jesus, that they would not expect, but that you keep on the good work, and that that they will be open for it, Jesus. Thank you, God. We want to bless you. Amen. Cool. If you have any more questions that come up while you process, make sure you ask Federico. No, you can ask any of us. I'm sure you'll have small group as well, and Federico is always willing to help and listen. So yeah.
Thank you.
No, we're good.
So much, Melo. And amazing. Thank you guys for joining us at all the different hours represented, different time zones. We know some of you woke up really early. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Chris is going to be posting some journal questions later for you guys. So hopefully you guys can get your journal soon. Just message us. We're always here for you guys. Let us know. We're praying for you and praying for all the visas that are coming soon.
Yeah. As well, we are going to be doing some feedback from all the teachings, just because we want to hear from you guys more about like what really spoke to you during the teaching, things like that. So I'll be posting the questions for those, and those will be sent to me each week. You'll just tell me a highlight, something that was new or stood out to you that you haven't heard before, and as well like something that challenged you. And then just for the journal questions, those are things separately to be put in your journals, and then you can like take a photo of your journal and send it to your discipler. So there's 2 different types of variations of the questions, but yeah, I'll write it out as well and put it in the group so you don't have to remember it, but yeah.
Any questions about that? Cool. Thank you guys. See you all soon. Have a good one. Enjoy your afternoon.